An elderly woman walked out of prison after 20 years, but her daughter wouldn't let her into the house. And later, when she came looking for a job, she was stunned. Hello, my dear ones. Put aside your tasks for a minute. I want to tell you a story that will make you see your loved ones in a different light. Write to us where you're watching from. We wish you a pleasant listen. The rain was pouring down, turning Denver's streets into muddy streams. Rose stood under the awning of an upscale building, clutching a shabby bundle of belongings to her chest. Everything that was left of her past life. Water dripped from her faded coat, pooling at her worn-out shoes bought with the meager money given to her upon release. Across the entrance, a golden plaque with the apartment number gleamed, and through the glass doors she could see a marble floor and mirrors in gilded frames. Such a contrast to what her eyes had grown used to over the last 20 years, gray concrete, rusty bars, peeling walls. Could my Alma really live here? Rose wondered, peering at the list of residents on the electronic display. Once, long ago, in another life, she and her husband Marvin had squeezed into a modest apartment on the outskirts of town. And even then they were happy. Little Alma ran across the street to kindergarten, while Rose worked as a nurse at a local clinic. Eyes trained to scan the half-light of a prison cell quickly caught a familiar name. Alma Scheider, Apt. 137. Her heart skipped a beat, and her fingers tightened around the handle of the worn bag where she carried everything she had after 20 years behind bars. A change of clothes, a photo of little Alma in her school uniform, a battered novel with folded corners, and a yellowed letter written in a child's handwriting, the last thing she ever received from her daughter. Rose pulled a crumpled slip of paper from her pocket. She had asked her lawyer to find out where her daughter lived now, and he had taken pity and found the information. Luxury residential complex, Royal Plaza, the note read. When Rose was sent away, Denver didn't even have buildings like this. And the neighborhood was nothing like it is now. Old houses, garages, a small market where she and Alma used to buy strawberries on Sundays. Gathering her courage, the woman pressed the button next to her daughter's name. The buzz echoed through the empty lobby, where a guard eyed the soaked visitor with suspicion. "Who's there?" came a wary female voice after a moment, a voice that had grown strange over the years. "Alma, it's me. Mama, Rose," she managed, her voice trembling. She had rehearsed these words thousands of times, imagining their meeting. Sometimes in her fantasies, her daughter would run into her arms, sometimes she'd look at her with icy disdain. But never had Rose imagined that their first conversation after so many years would happen through an intercom, with the rain pounding down. Silence. So long that Rose thought the line had cut off. She was about to press the button again when the speaker crackled. "What do you want?" asked the cold voice, one she barely recognized as her little girl's. It was the voice of a grown woman, confident and used to giving orders. Rose swallowed the lump in her throat. Where was the little girl who once brought her homemade Mother's Day cards, who cried when she scraped her knees and ran to her for comfort? "I just got out today," Rose murmured, trying to keep her voice steady. "I have nowhere to go, Alma. Our old house, other people live there now." The memory of that day came flooding back, the day she was arrested. Marvin, her husband, had come home drunk again. As usual, he started picking a fight, then he hit her. She had endured it for years. At first she thought it would pass, later she feared Alma would grow up without a father. But that evening, he grabbed a knife. She had only defended herself, just pushed him away, but he fell so badly. The blade pierced straight into his heart. "Are you out of your mind?" Her daughter's voice snapped her out of the memory, sharper now. "I have guests tonight, partners coming over with their families. What am I supposed to say? Meet my mother, the criminal, fresh out of prison." The word criminal cut deeper than any knife. Rose closed her eyes. She had prepared for this conversation for 20 years. She had imagined it thousands of times, playing out different scenarios during sleepless nights on the hard prison cot. But reality was harsher than any of her fears. "I'm not asking for much, sweetheart," she whispered, fighting back tears. "Just one night. Tomorrow I'll find a job, rent a room." "A job?" Alma's laugh was bitter. "At 65? With a record? Mom, don't make me laugh. Do you have any idea how much the world has changed? Now it's all computers, the internet, cell phones. Even young people struggle to find work without tech skills." Rose glanced at the billboard across the street. A smiling young woman held a flat rectangular object with an apple on it. In prison, she had seen guards with phones. Small ones that fit in the palm of a hand. But the internet, she could barely imagine it. Something connected to computers, as her young cellmate Isla had once tried to explain. "That can all be learned, Alma. What matters is that we can be together again, Rose said, feeling the raindrops blend with her tears. I've missed you so much. I thought about you every single day. I wrote letters, which I never read. Alma cut her off coldly. Mom, don't you get it? I have a different life now. I'm a top manager at an international company. I have a reputation, a standing in society. I'm married to a man who doesn't even know my mother went to prison for murder. Behind Rose, an expensive car splashed through a puddle, soaking her with muddy water. She didn't even flinch, just kept staring into the dark entrance as if she could see her daughter's face behind it. Alma, I just want to see you, she whispered. 20 years you were still a little girl when it all happened. Remember how we used to go to the park for rides? How I taught you to skate? Exactly, her daughter snapped. 20 years. Where were you when I graduated high school? When I finished college? When I got married? When I had my son? Do you even know you have a grandson? He's 17 now, going to college next year. Rose gasped for breath. A grandson? She had a grandson? A 17-year-old young man she had never seen, never held in her arms, never sung lullabies to, never walked to his first day of school. The thought made her chest tighten. Somewhere close by, just behind that glass door, lived her own flesh and blood, and she didn't even know what he looked like. I didn't know, she whispered, her legs giving way beneath her. She had to lean against the wall to keep from collapsing. What's his name? Who does he look like? That doesn't matter, Alma said after a pause. Listen, I'll send you money. Go to Riverside. Aunt Paige, remember her? She's still alive. I help her sometimes. Stay with her, and I'll send you money every month. Just don't ever come here again. Never. Maxwell mustn't know. He thinks his grandmother died of an illness when I was little. Something snapped in Rose's chest, like a dry branch breaking underfoot in a winter forest. Her daughter had told her grandson she was dead, declared her gone, erased her from life. A young woman with a child walked past, casting a curious glance at the drenched old lady by the entrance. Rose's eyes followed the little boy. That's probably how her grandson Maxwell once looked when he was small. Maxwell, a beautiful name. She wondered who had chosen it. I understand, she managed to say. But maybe you could come out? Just for a minute? Let me see you, and then I'll go. I swear. There was a heavy sigh on the other end. Mom, I don't have time. In 2 hours guests will arrive. I need to finish a presentation, get myself ready. I understand, Rose answered quietly. You've always been so businesslike, even as a child. Remember how we made that school wall newspaper together? You were always in charge, this headline here, that picture there. Mom, Alma's voice sharpened. I'll transfer money to your card. You have a card, right? No, Rose said in confusion. They gave us cash when they released me. Of course, Alma muttered impatiently. Fine, I'll send it to a bank account. You can collect it with your ID. I'll send the bank address to this intercom. But now I really need to go. What's his name? Rose asked, clinging to her last chance. It doesn't matter, Alma said after another pause. Maxwell. His name is Maxwell. He's very smart, into programming. Goodbye, Mom. The intercom went dead. Rose slowly lowered her hand. The rain grew heavier, but she didn't notice. Memories flooded her, bloodied kitchen knife in her hands, Alma's terrified face in the doorway, neighbors shouting, police sirens, the stern judge reading her sentence. Maxwell, my grandson Maxwell, her lips whispered. I wonder if he loves to read like she did. Or maybe he takes after his mother, practical, ambitious. Or perhaps his father, the man he never even knew. Suddenly the building's door opened and a tall boy in a hood appeared. Rose's heart froze. Could this be him? Her grandson? But the young man walked past without even glancing at the soaked old woman standing in the rain. She didn't know how long she remained there. She only came to her senses when an elderly couple passed by under a large umbrella, eyeing her curiously. Do you need help? The woman asked, holding her husband's arm. Are you waiting for someone? No, Rose shook her head. I'm not waiting anymore. Not all roads lead home, she thought as she slowly walked away from the entrance. She had to spend the night at the train station. Her money was only enough for a commuter ticket to Riverside, but the train didn't leave until morning. Rose huddled in a corner of the waiting hall, trying not to be noticed. A policeman gave her suspicious looks a few times but didn't approach. There were too many people like her, lost, unwanted. Sleep wouldn't come. Thoughts of her grandson tormented her. What was he like? Probably tall. Marvin's whole family was tall. Smart, Alma had always been a good student. And his character? Was he kind? Did he know about loyalty, about the strength to protect those you love, even at the cost of your own freedom? By dawn, she was shivering from the cold. In the station bathroom, she washed in icy water and tried to tidy herself up. In the mirror, a worn-out woman stared back, gray hair pulled into a bun, deep wrinkles, a dim, lifeless gaze. Was this really her, Rose? The same woman who once was the life of the party, the best nurse at the clinic, a beloved wife before Marvin started drinking, a devoted mother. The train to Riverside left at 7 in the morning. Sitting by the window, watching the houses roll past, Rose wondered what awaited her in her hometown. Aunt Paige, if still alive, must be very old, well into her 80s. Would she take in her niece, just out of prison? Was she even still alive? Alma had said she was, but 2 hours later, she was standing on the Riverside platform. Almost nothing had changed. The same chip benches, the same kiosk where they once sold soda, though now it offered beer and cigarettes instead. Rose slowly walked down the familiar childhood road toward Aunt Paige's house. It was still there, old, crooked, with a garden overrun by weeds. When she knocked, a hunched old woman leaning on a cane came to the door. "Aunt Paige?" Rose asked hesitantly. The old woman squinted, peering into her visitor's face. "Rose, is it really you?" She mumbled with her toothless mouth. "I thought I'd never see you again. Alma said you were getting out soon." So Alma hadn't lied. She really had kept in touch with her aunt, even helped her. That brought a small comfort. Come in, Aunt Paige fussed. "I prepared a room for you. Alma sent me money. I fixed the wallpaper, even bought a bed." So her daughter had planned everything in advance. She knew she wouldn't let her mother cross the threshold and had prepared a refuge for her far away from her comfortable life. The next morning, Rose woke up early. The decision had come to her in a dream. She couldn't stay here, in this quiet backwater among strangers, and in Riverside, after 20 years, almost no one she once knew remained. She would go back to Denver, find a job, rent a room, and live on her own. Maybe one day Alma would soften. Maybe her grandson Maxwell would want to know about his grandmother himself. A day later, she was back in Denver. Her first stop was the employment center. That was where they were supposed to help people find work. Even if it was something simple, unprestigious. She wasn't afraid of hard work. In prison she had worked in the laundry, then in the medical ward. Her nursing skills had come in handy there. The next day, she was sitting in the employment office, filling out a form with a trembling hand. When she reached the lined last place of work, she froze, biting her lip. How could she write that the last 20 years had been spent in prison, and before that she had been a nurse in a local clinic? Who would hire her now, at 65, branded as a murderer? Next, a voice called from behind the partition. Rose sighed, gathered her documents, and stepped up to the window. Behind the glass sat a plump, middle-aged woman with a tired face and dyed hair. "Have a seat," she said with a nod. "We don't have many openings for seniors, but let's see what we can find." She glanced over the form, frowned, and pointed with her pen. "You didn't fill in your last job." Rose hesitated. "I was incarcerated. 20 years. The woman raised her eyes, studying her closely, but there was no judgment, no disgust in her look. Only the weary indifference of someone who had seen it all. "I see," she nodded. "Any professional background?" "I'm a nurse," Rose said softly. "Well, I was. My certification expired long ago." "With a record, they won't take you into medicine," the employee shook her head. "Maybe as a cleaner? Or dishwasher? There's an opening in a nursing home as an aide. But it's tough work, and you're all ready." "I can handle it," Rose said firmly. "In the prison medical wing, I've done worse. At least in a nursing home I'll be useful." "As you wish," the woman shrugged, handing her a slip of paper. "Here, go there. Ask for Harriet Murphy, she's the head nurse. Say you're from us." Rose thanked her and walked out of the center. For the first time in days, she felt a flicker of hope. She would have work, a roof over her head. Maybe life could still turn around. The nursing home Golden Autumn stood on the edge of the city, in a former boarding house. A 3-story red brick building, surrounded by a park of bare linden and maple trees. Rose lingered at the gates, gathering her courage. That smell, medicine, hospital food, antiseptic. She would recognize it anywhere. The prison's medical wing had smelled the same. Better than the street, she thought, adjusting her faded scarf and brushing off the only decent dress she had, bought with Alma's money at a local shop. At the entrance stood a plump woman in a white coat, her dyed red hair pulled into a loose bun. "Who are you here for?" she asked, giving Rose an appraising look. I need Harriet Murphy, Rose answered, handing over the referral from the employment center. I'm here about the aide position. The woman studied the paper, then looked at Rose again. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking? 65, Rose answered honestly. And you want to work as an aide? There was doubt in her voice. It's hard work, you know, turning patients, washing them. Some weigh close to 200 pounds. Rose straightened, squaring her shoulders. I worked as a nurse for 20 years, then circumstances. I know what caring for bedridden patients means, and I have the strength. The woman snorted but handed back the paper and nodded toward the corridor. Third door on the right. Harriet Murphy's and they're finishing a meeting. Rose thanked her and walked down the corridor slowly, ignoring the curious stares of staff and residents. She was used to looks like that in prison. Newcomers were always studied, evaluated, judged. By the indicated door, several nurses in white coats stood waiting for the meeting to end. One of them, very young, with short hair and heavy makeup, was on the phone. Yes, Mom, I'll be late again, she said. We're short on aides, I'll have to work another double. What? No, Harriet Murphy promised us overtime pay. Rose sat on a bench by the wall. So they really were short-staffed. Maybe that would improve her chances. In prison, she had gotten into the medical wing only because nobody else wanted to care for the sick inmates. Finally, the door opened, and out stepped a tall, trim woman of about 48, with perfect posture and chestnut hair pulled into a tight bun. Her face showed fatigue, but her eyes were sharp and attentive. Harriet, there's a visitor for you, the duty nurse said, nodding toward Rose. The head nurse stopped, giving the visitor a quick once-over. Come in, she nodded toward the office. The room was small but cozy. Family photos stood in frames on the desk. Harriet sat down and gestured for Rose to take the chair opposite. I'm listening. Rose handed over the referral and briefly explained why she had come. Harriet studied the paper carefully. You left the section about your last job blank, she noted. Where have you been working these past years? Rose swallowed hard. This was the moment of truth. She could lie, make something up, but she was too tired of lies. For 20 years, she hadn't been able to tell the truth about that fateful night when she defended herself from her husband. For 20 years, everyone had thought of her as a cold-blooded murderer. I was incarcerated, she said quietly. 20 years for murder. But I didn't kill anyone, she quickly added, seeing the change in Harriet's face. It was self-defense. My husband. That's not my concern, Harriet cut her off. You served your sentence, which means you've paid your debt to the law. But she hesitated. This job involves caring for vulnerable people, elderly, often helpless. I need to be sure that. I have never intentionally harmed anyone, Rose said firmly. 20 years ago, I defended myself from a tyrant husband who beat me for years. That night he grabbed a knife, and I just pushed him away. He fell on his own blade. Harriet looked at her intently, as if trying to see something beyond the words. Before that, I worked as a nurse for 20 years, Rose continued. Later, in prison, I was an aide in the medical ward. I have experience caring for patients, and I really need this job. Silence hung in the air. Outside, a crow cawed, sharp and unsettling, pulling Rose back to reality. If she was rejected here, she'd have to look for work as a janitor or cleaner. With her bad back, that would be almost impossible. All right, Harriet said unexpectedly. We'll take you on a trial basis. 1 month. If you manage, you'll stay. The job is tough, 12-hour shifts, 2 days on, 2 off. The pay isn't much, but there's a staff room where you can live. Meals are provided too, communal, but good quality. Rose could barely hold back tears of relief. A job, and a roof over her head. More than she had dared to hope for. Thank you, she breathed. I won't let you down. I hope so, Harriet nodded. We're critically short of staff, especially for the more difficult patients. Can you start tomorrow? Of course, Rose agreed quickly. Here's your pass. Harriet filled out a form and handed it to her. Give it to the superintendent, he'll show you your room. And tomorrow at 8, I'll meet you here. We'll go through orientation and introduce you to the ward. Rose stood, thanked her, and headed for the door. But just as she reached it, Harriet called out. And one more thing, it's better not to mention your past to the residents. Many of them have prejudices. You understand? I understand, Rose nodded. Thank you. Her room was tiny, no more than 6 square meters. A narrow bed, a wardrobe, a table, a chair, and a small refrigerator buzzing in the corner. But after a prison cell packed with 8 women, this felt like paradise. Her own space. Her own territory. No clanging of metal dishes, no guards shouting, no cellmates snoring. Rose's belongings fit into a single drawer of the wardrobe. After spreading the sheets given to her by the superintendent, she lay down and closed her eyes. Tomorrow her new life would begin. The life of a free woman, even with such a heavy past on her shoulders. In the morning, she was assigned to the ward for bedridden patients, the hardest one, as a nurse whispered to her. Here lay those who couldn't move on their own, many with dementia or after strokes. We call this floor the Quiet Harbor, explained Harriet, guiding her on the tour. These are our most difficult cases. Most never leave their beds, some hardly speak. Your job will be to keep the rooms clean, change linens, help the nurses with hygiene, and feed those who can't eat by themselves. They stopped at a room at the end of the hall. A sign on the door read, A.S. Warlock. This is our special patient. Harriet lowered her voice. Kane Warlock, professor of literature. About 3 years ago, he suffered a massive stroke, leaving him almost completely paralyzed. He barely speaks, only a few words now and then. His children pay for his care, very generously, so he has a private room. She carefully opened the door. The room was bright, with a wide window overlooking the park. Against the wall stood a hospital bed, where a thin, gray-haired man lay. His face was asymmetrical, the stroke's legacy, but his eyes, fixed on the window, were alive and full of thought. Kane, this is a new staff member, Harriet said gently. This is Rose. She'll be helping with your care. The man slowly turned his head. His heavy, measuring gaze reminded Rose of the judge who had once read her sentence. No, he said with effort. Don't want. You need to, Kane, Harriet replied patiently. You know you need help. Rose is very experienced. She was a nurse. The patient turned back to the window, making it clear the conversation was over. He's always like this, Harriet sighed as they stepped out. He refuses help, ashamed of his helplessness. But don't mind it, just do what's needed. In time, he'll get used to you. The day passed quickly. Rose helped the nurses, washed floors, changed sheets, fed the bedridden patients. The work was physically hard but familiar. In the prison's medical ward, she had done the same, only in worse conditions and with fewer resources. In the evening, exhausted but content, she returned to her room. While undressing, Rose accidentally knocked over the photo of Alma she had placed on the nightstand. The frame fell, and the glass cracked. Bad omen, Rose thought, carefully lifting the photo out of the shards. Her daughter in the picture was still just a girl, no more than 14. School uniform, braids tied with ribbons. Graduation, May 1993. A month before everything happened. It's all right, Alma, Rose whispered, looking at the photo. I'll manage. And maybe one day you'll understand. The days stretched into weeks. Rose settled into her work, got to know the staff and the nursing home residents. With many of them, she built warm connections. She knew how to handle the elderly, she was patient and attentive. Only Kane remained distant. He endured the necessary procedures but turned away whenever Rose tried to speak with him. Don't take it to heart, Nurse Shelby reassured her. He's like that with everyone. Ever since the stroke, he hardly talks. Even when his kids come, he just nods or shakes his head. One day, as she passed Kane's room, Rose heard a faint knock. She peeked in and saw him struggling to reach a book on the table. His paralyzed hand slid helplessly across the sheet. Let me help you, Rose said, stepping into the room. The man froze, then reluctantly nodded. She handed him a volume of Sherlock Holmes stories. Kane tried to hold it, but his fingers wouldn't cooperate. The book slipped and fell to the floor. Damn, he muttered, and Rose, to her surprise, saw tears in his eyes. Tears of helplessness and humiliation. I can read to you, she offered, picking up the book. Which story did you want? Kane studied her for a long moment, as if weighing something. Then, slowly, he said, The Hound of the Baskervilles. Rose found the story and began to read. Her voice was hesitant at first but grew stronger as she lost herself in the text. In prison, she had often read aloud to her cellmates. It helped pass the long evenings and ease heavy thoughts. When she finished, Kane was looking at her differently. You read well, he said with effort. More. From that day on, an unspoken routine formed between them. At the end of her shift, Rose would stop by Kane's room and read. Gradually, she noticed his speech becoming clearer, his gaze more focused. You're working wonders, Harriet remarked once, catching her reading in the professor's room. Since you started, he's much more responsive. Even the speech therapist is surprised by his progress. He just needed someone to talk to, Rose shrugged. Books are good, but real conversation is better. One evening, after she finished reading, she noticed Kane watching her with unusual intensity. Where did you learn to read like that? He asked. Rose hesitated. She usually avoided talking about her past, but with him, she suddenly wanted to be honest. In prison, she said softly, there's plenty of time to read there. She expected fear or disgust in his eyes. Instead, she saw only curiosity. For what? Murder, she answered even quieter. But it was self-defense. My husband, he came at me with a knife. I only defended myself. Kane was silent for a long time, staring out the window at the falling leaves. I know, he said at last. What do you mean? Rose asked in confusion. You. I know you. Rose stared at him, stunned. How could this man know her? I was at the trial, Kane said with difficulty. A witness. The room seemed to tilt. Rose grabbed the back of the chair to steady herself. You were a witness at my trial? She whispered. But how? I don't remember you. Neighbor, Kane explained. Lived upstairs. Heard the shouting. Saw him hitting you. Rose's memory scrambled, pulling up fragments of the past. The neighbor upstairs? There had been some professor. She had seen him occasionally in the elevator. Quiet, always with books and newspapers. Could it really have been him? You testified? She asked, her heart pounding. Kane slowly shook his head. No, didn't show up. I was afraid. But you just said you were at the trial, Rose said, baffled. In the gallery. Watching. Didn't speak. Rose fell silent, trying to process. This man knew the truth. He had seen Marvin beat her. He could have confirmed she had endured years of abuse. And he had stayed silent. Stayed silent when one word from him could have changed her sentence. I'm sorry, Kane Warlock whispered, tears welling in his eyes. I should have. But Rose wasn't listening anymore. She fled the room, slamming the door behind her. Her ears rang, red spots swam before her eyes. 20 years. 20 years stolen from her, from Alma, from their family. All because one man chose silence. Rose didn't remember how she got back to her room. Everything around her blurred like fog. She sat on the bed, clenching and unclenching her fists, trying to calm the storm inside. So there had been a witness. Someone who knew the truth and could have confirmed her words. Someone who could have saved her from those 20 terrible years. But he stayed silent. The courtroom came back to her mind. The prosecutor demanding the maximum punishment for a cold-blooded domestic killing. The court-appointed lawyer flipping indifferently through the pages, never even trying to defend her properly. And herself, confused, stunned, repeating over and over, I was only defending myself. No one believed her. The neighbor who often saw Marvin drunk suddenly couldn't recall his aggression. The officers she had turned to twice after beatings claimed there were no records. And this man, Kane, who had seen and heard Marvin abusing her, he had simply chosen not to testify. Afraid, he had said. Of what? That thugs would come after him? That the neighbors would judge? Or just that he didn't want to waste time on someone else's problems? A knock at the door pulled her from her bitter thoughts. On the threshold stood Harriet, worry written across her face. Rose, what happened? She asked. Kane is very upset. He tried to explain something, but I couldn't understand. Did you two argue? Rose turned toward the window. Should she tell the truth? That this man had destroyed her life with his silence? No, that wouldn't change anything. It would only cost her the job. Everything's fine, she said at last. We just talked about the past. It upset me a little. Tomorrow everything will be fine. Harriet looked at her doubtfully but didn't press. All right, get some rest. You've got your shift at 8 tomorrow. Left alone, Rose sat motionless for a long time. The rage slowly ebbed, replaced by a dull ache and exhaustion. What was the point of being angry now? Nothing could be undone. Not the years in prison, not the broken bond with her daughter, not the chance to watch her grandson grow up. All of it was gone forever. Her eyes fell on the cracked photo of Alma. Maybe if not for that sentence, things would have turned out differently. Maybe she and her daughter would still be close. Maybe she would have known her grandson. Or maybe Marvin would have killed me the next time, Rose thought. Who knows how life would have turned? The past can't be changed. All you can do is accept it and keep living. Prison had taught her that. The next morning, she came to her shift as usual. She did her duties, chatted with the staff and residents, but it all felt like a dream. Only Kane's room she avoided, asking another aide to cover for her. Something happened? The girl asked. I thought you got along with him. I just don't want it today, Rose replied. Tomorrow I'll handle it myself. But the next day she avoided his room again. And the day after, Harriet noticed and called her in. Rose, this won't do, she said sternly. Kane is asking for you. He's refusing procedures, won't take his medicine, won't eat. Whatever happened between you two, you need to fix it. Otherwise, I'll have to reconsider your assignment. I understand, Rose answered quietly. I'll talk to him today. That evening, summoning all her will, she knocked on the familiar door. Without waiting for an answer, she went in. Kane lay turned toward the window. Hearing her steps, he slowly turned his head. His face had grown gaunt over these days, dark circles under his eyes. You came, he breathed, relief plain in his voice. Rose silently approached the bed, adjusted his pillow, poured water from the pitcher into a glass. You need to drink more water, she said in a professional tone. And take your medicine on time. I'm sorry, Kane whispered. I should have gone then. I should have spoken. It doesn't matter anymore, she replied, keeping her voice steady. It's all in the past. No, Kane shook his head, tears in his eyes. Not the past. I live with it every day. Every night I see it in my sleep. Rose sat down in the chair by his bed. Something in his voice, in his eyes, made her stop and listen. I was a coward, Kane continued, forcing out the words. Career, reputation, I only thought of myself. He paused, catching his breath. Speaking was hard for him, but it was clear he had been preparing for this, gathering strength. I heard him shouting at you, beating you, every night, he went on. I thought many times about calling the police, but I chickened out. Not my business, I told myself. Rose sat silent, her hands clenched so tight in her lap that her knuckles turned white. That night, Kane closed his eyes for a moment, as if seeing the scene from 20 years ago. I heard him storm in, drunk, raging, shouting he'd kill you. Then the crash, the screams. Rose flinched. She remembered that night as if it had been yesterday. Marvin came home late, drunk beyond reason. Started throwing things, accusing her of cheating, of wasting money. Then he hit her, knocking her down. When he grabbed the kitchen knife, she thought it was the end. By some miracle, she managed to shove him away, and he fell onto his own blade. I heard the police arrive, Kane went on. Heard them take you away. Saw your little girl's terrified face in the doorway. I wanted to step forward, to say I knew the truth. But you didn't, Rose finished for him. Her voice carried no accusation, only weariness. I didn't, Kane echoed. And then, at the trial, I kept silent too. Sat there in the gallery and said nothing. He drew a labored breath. Afterward I started drinking. Every night I saw you in my dreams. Your eyes when they led you away. Your little girl left standing on the stairs. I dropped out of university, lost everything. My wife left. My children turned their backs. Rose listened in surprise to this confession. She had never imagined her tragedy could so deeply scar another's life. Later I pulled myself together, Kane continued. Went back to teaching. Wrote a book. Became a professor. But inside the guilt never left. He looked her straight in the eyes. When the stroke came, I thought, this is punishment. Deserved. The room was silent, save for the ticking clock on the wall and the faint voices from the hall. Rose studied this man, broken by illness and, as she now knew, by his own conscience. And she felt her anger slowly loosening its grip. Why are you telling me this? She finally asked. So I'll forgive you? So you'll feel better? No, Kane shook his head. Not for forgiveness. I just want you to know, I understand what I did. And if there's any way I can fix something. He broke off, coughing. Rose instinctively held his head, helped him sip water. What could you fix? She asked softly when the fit passed. Give me back 20 years? Give me back a daughter who now despises me? Let me watch my grandson grow up? The pain in Kane's eyes was so raw that Rose suddenly realized this man had been tormented all these years, in his own way, as much as she had. And now, bedridden and helpless, he saw in her not just a caregiver but the living embodiment of his guilt, the chance he had missed to do what was right. I don't know if I can forgive you, she admitted honestly, but I can try to understand. And not hold on to hate. She stood, straightened his blanket, picked up a book from the nightstand. I'll keep reading to you, she said, and I'll take care of you as I should. The rest will come with time. Kane nodded, a tear glinting in his eye. Thank you, he whispered. Rose opened the book and began to read. The familiar lines flowed like a river, carrying away the bitterness and pain of the past. She didn't know if she could ever truly forgive this man. But she understood that clinging to anger meant staying in prison, even outside its walls. A month passed. Slowly, her relationship with Kane improved. She kept reading to him, and in return, he made greater efforts each day to speak. Slowly, painfully, but more clearly. Sometimes they even talked, about books, about prison life, about how the world had changed in 20 years. Internet, cell phones, Kane said. Everything's different now. Our students can't even imagine how we lived without it. I still don't understand how to use those phones, Rose admitted. I've got a simple one with buttons. Harriet gave it to me from a charity fund. For emergencies. My grandson will teach you, Kane offered. He's coming on Thursday. Smart boy. On Thursday, Rose happened to be on shift. She saw a tall young man walk into Kane's room, a backpack slung over one shoulder. Blonde, serious looking, wearing glasses. Nothing like the rowdy teenagers who used to hang around her building 20 years ago. This is Archie, my grandson, Kane introduced him when Rose came in to change the floor. And this is Rose, she's saving my life. Hello, the boy greeted politely. Grandpa told me a lot about you. He says you read wonderfully. Your grandpa exaggerates, Rose said, embarrassed. Excuse me, I won't intrude. Your time together is precious. It's fine, Kane objected. Archie came with important news today. Tell her. The boy's face lit up. I got into Columbia. Journalism faculty. Can you imagine? There were 20 applicants for each spot. Congratulations, Rose said sincerely, genuinely happy for him. That's wonderful. Takes after me, Kane said proudly. I studied there too. Suddenly, a sharp pain pierced Rose's heart. Maxwell, her own grandson, was also 17. He too must be preparing for university. Where? What did he dream about? She would never know. As if reading her thoughts, Kane suddenly added, Rose is a grandmother too. She has a grandson your age. Really? Archie perked up. What does he do? I don't know, Rose admitted quietly. We don't talk. Sorry, the boy said, embarrassed. I didn't mean. It's all right, Rose smiled. Life takes different turns. What matters is, he exists. Somewhere. She finished with the 4 and was about to leave when Kane called after her. Wait, Archie wanted to help you with your phone. The boy nodded. Grandpa said you needed help with your mobile. I could show you the basics. It's not hard. Rose hesitated. On one hand, she truly needed help. The new world of technology frightened and confused her. On the other, she felt awkward taking up the young man's time when he'd come to visit his sick grandfather. Don't worry, I'll be glad to, Archie said, as if reading her mind. I can update Grandpa at the same time. He likes to be in the loop. And so, unexpectedly, Rose found herself perched on the edge of a chair, listening to Archie's patient explanations on how to use a cell phone, while Kane watched proudly. If only I could sit like this with Maxwell, she thought sadly. But she quickly pulled herself back. No use chasing empty dreams. She had to value what she had. And it was not little, a job, a roof over her head, a life that was slowly coming together. And now, not her own grandson, but a kind young man, patiently showing her how to send messages and look up information on that mysterious internet. In mid-October, a commission from a charitable foundation visited the nursing home. Harriet was restless, the staff scrambled to make everything spotless, and the residents were asked to be extra polite with the guests. Rose didn't think much of it. In prison, inspections were regular, and she had grown used to the fuss around officials. The Generations Connection Foundation does so much for us, explained Nurse Shelby while they changed sheets in one of the rooms. They paid for the third-floor renovation, buy medicines, even add to our salaries. So we have to make a good impression, or they might stop helping. Who runs the foundation? Rose asked, smoothing out a fresh sheet. Some businesswoman. I've never seen her. Usually her deputy comes, and Harriet deals with her. But they say today the chairwoman herself will show up. Voices echoed in the corridor. Harriet was explaining something energetically, pointing toward the dining hall. Rose peeked out of the room and froze. Just 2 steps away, with her back turned, stood a woman in an elegant navy blue suit, blonde hair pinned neatly in a bun. She was jotting notes on a tablet, listening to the head nurse. That confident posture, the way she brushed a strand of hair back. Rose's breath caught. Alma? Could it really be her daughter? The woman turned, and their eyes met. For a split second, surprise flickered in Alma's gaze, but it quickly turned to cold detachment. She looked away, pretending not to notice Rose, and continued her conversation with Harriet. It was Alma. Rose slowly retreated back into the room, her hands trembling. Her heart pounded so hard it felt ready to burst. She leaned against the wall, trying to get control of herself. Did you see a ghost or something? Shelby whispered, noticing her pale face. Just felt dizzy, Rose lied. It'll pass. The commission moved down the hall. Rose heard Harriet talking about new physiotherapy equipment, then the voices faded. The delegation must have gone downstairs. I'm going out for a smoke, Shelby said. Can you finish this last room? Rose nodded. Left alone, she sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process what had just happened. Alma, her daughter, the head of the charitable foundation that supported this nursing home. What irony, she hadn't seen her daughter in 20 years, and now they were working under the same roof. Or rather, Rose worked in a place her daughter's foundation funded. What should she do? Should she approach her? Say something? But Alma had made it clear she didn't want contact. She hadn't even greeted her, had pretended not to recognize her. Her thoughts were cut short by the ringing of her cell phone. Thanks to Kane's grandson, Rose had learned the basics, though she still struggled with many functions. Hello? She said uncertainly, holding it to her ear. Rose? It was Harriet's voice. Please come to my office. Urgently. The tension in her voice made Rose's stomach clench. Could it be that Alma had demanded her dismissal? But why? She did her job well, the patients were happy. The office felt stifling. Harriet sat at her desk, and in the visitor's chair, Alma, her face like stone. Come in, Rose, Harriet said. Alma Scheider wants to speak with you. Alone, if you don't mind, Alma added coldly. Harriet looked surprised but didn't argue. She stood up and left, closing the door tightly behind her. Mother and daughter were alone. Rose stood by the door, afraid to move. Alma sat straight, hands folded on her knees. Exactly the same posture she had as a child when she felt guilty but tried not to show it. What are you doing here? Alma finally asked. Her voice held no anger, only weariness. Working, Rose answered softly. I told you I'd find a job. At Golden Autumn? In a facility funded by my foundation? Alma shook her head. This is absurd. Did you come here on purpose? Were you following me? What? Rose was taken aback by the thought. Of course not. The employment center sent me here. I had no idea you were connected to this place. I only found out today. Alma looked at her with suspicion, as if trying to catch a lie. But Rose was telling the truth, and her daughter must have felt it. All right, Alma finally said. I believe you, but now you'll have to leave. Leave? Rose echoed. But why? I'm doing good work. People here value me. Because I can't come here and run into you every time, Alma snapped. It's too much. I built my life for 20 years without a mother. I made a career, built a family, founded a foundation. And now suddenly you show up, as if nothing ever happened. But I wasn't guilty of what happened, Rose said softly. I was defending myself. Your father. Don't, Alma cut her off. I don't want to hear how awful he was. Maybe he wasn't perfect, but he didn't deserve what you did to him. Rose shook her head. Alma had been too little to understand the nightmare they lived in. She had only seen the surface, a dad who sometimes came home drunk and yelled at Mom. But Rose always hid the bruises, explained broken ribs as falls, a split lip as a trip to the dentist. Alma, Rose said gently, I understand how you feel. I'm not asking you to take me back into your life. Just let me stay here, keep this job. I've only just begun to rebuild something. I have a roof over my head, a small but steady income. You still have the money I sent you, Alma cut her off. And Aunt Paige's house. Stay there. Aunt Paige died 3 weeks ago, Rose said quietly. Alma flinched. What? Why didn't you tell me? How could I? You never gave me your number. I had no way to reach you. A heavy silence fell. Outside, rain whispered against the window, and somewhere down the hall a nurse burst out laughing. I'm sorry, Alma said at last. Aunt Paige was a good woman. But it doesn't change anything. You'll have to find another job. Rose said nothing, her eyes on the yellow leaves outside, spinning down in their slow autumn dance. Do you know you have a grandson? She asked suddenly. Yes, Maxwell. He's 17, probably getting ready for university, like Archie. How do you know about Archie? Alma asked sharply. Archie is Kane's grandson, my patients. He visits every week. A good boy. He helped me with my phone. Alma frowned. Wait, Kane Warlock? The literature professor? Yes, Rose nodded. After his stroke he could barely speak, but now he's improving. I read to him, and I know Kane Warlock, Alma cut in. He was on the board of our foundation. A very respected man. And you're taking care of him? Yes. For the past 3 months. Alma drummed her fingers on the table, clearly deep in thought. All right, she said at last. I'll talk to Harriet. You can stay, but only on one condition. You don't tell anyone you're my mother. Not the staff, not the patients. No one. And you don't try to contact me or my family. Understood? Rose swallowed hard. Her own daughter was renouncing her as if she carried a plague. Understood, she said quietly. But may I at least see my grandson? Just once, even from a distance? Alma was about to refuse, but something in her mother's eyes, the pain, the longing, the fragile hope, softened her. I'll think about it, she said reluctantly. Now I have to go. The commission isn't finished. She stood, straightened her jacket, and walked to the door. But at the threshold she turned. By the way, how do you know Maxwell's preparing for university? You said it yourself when we met, Rose reminded her. That he's 17 and applying next year. Alma nodded. Yes, that's true. Well then, goodbye. Goodbye, my daughter, Rose whispered, but Alma had already closed the door. The news that the chairwoman of Generations Connection knew Rose spread quickly through the nursing home halls. No one knew what the connection was, but everyone had seen them talk alone, and afterward Harriet had been especially attentive to the new aide. They say they studied together, Shelby whispered while spooning mashed potatoes onto residents' plates. Rose didn't correct the rumors. She just kept working, trying not to think about the fact that her own daughter refused to acknowledge her. She didn't speak of it in Kane's room either, but the professor, sensitive to her moods, immediately noticed something was wrong. What happened? He asked when Rose, distracted and lost in thought, dropped a glass during her evening round. Nothing, she tried to wave it off, gathering the shards. Just a hard day. I don't believe you, Kane said, shaking his head. You're too unsettled tonight. Rose sighed. Over these months she had grown used to trusting him with her thoughts and feelings. Despite their difficult history, or maybe because of it, something deep connected them. Not friendship, but an understanding. I saw my daughter today, she said quietly, sitting on the edge of his bed. Turns out she runs the foundation that funds this nursing home. Kane raised his brows in surprise. Alma Scheider? Generations Connection? Now it was Rose's turn to be surprised. You know her? Of course, Kane nodded. I was on the board. Quite the coincidence. Coincidence? Rose wondered. Maybe everything in life was connected. Maybe it wasn't an accident she had ended up here, caring for the very man who, 20 years ago, could have changed her fate. She doesn't want to acknowledge me as her mother, Rose said softly. She insists I keep it secret, and I understand her. Who wants a mother with a criminal record? Don't say that, Kane frowned. You're not a criminal. You're a victim. Of circumstances. Of the system. He paused, as if gathering the strength for a longer sentence. I'll talk to her. We work together in the foundation. She respects me. No, Rose shook her head. Don't. This is family business. She has a right to her feelings. I just wish I could see my grandson. Even once, from afar. You will, Kane said firmly. I promise. Rose smiled sadly. How could this paralyzed man, tied to his bed, influence her daughter? But she didn't argue. She saw it mattered to him, gave him purpose. Thank you, she simply said, and went back to tidying the room. That night, Rose couldn't sleep. She tossed and turned on the narrow bed, replaying every detail of her conversation with her daughter. How beautiful Alma had become. Confident, successful, and how cold, distant. Could it be that after 20 years, not a single drop of warmth remained between them? And her grandson, Maxwell, what did he look like? Whom did he take after? Did he know anything at all about his grandmother, or did he truly believe she was dead? Toward morning, Rose drifted into a restless sleep. She dreamed of little Alma in her school uniform, running across a field with a bouquet of daisies. Mommy, she called, reaching out the flowers. But no matter how hard Rose ran toward her, she couldn't catch up. The distance never closed. She woke to the sound of her phone ringing. An unfamiliar number lit up on the screen. Hello? Rose answered sleepily. Rose? Came a man's voice. This is Bradley, Kane Warlock's son. I need to talk to you. Today. It's important. Rose didn't remember Kane's son, but she had heard plenty about him from the staff. Bradley rarely visited, but he often called Harriet with complaints and demands. A real piece of work, Nurse Shelby had said bluntly. Only cares about money. His father's still alive, and he's already dividing the inheritance. They agreed to meet at a park near the nursing home. It was a chilly October day, heavy clouds threatening rain. Rose wrapped herself in an old coat, a gift from one of the staff, and looked around nervously. Why did Kane's son want to see her? What could he possibly want? Bradley showed up 20 minutes late, pulling up in an expensive car. He slammed the door and strode over to the bench where Rose waited. A heavy-set man in his 50s, balding, with a belly, an expensive coat, and a gold watch on his wrist. He bore no resemblance to his father, who even after the stroke still carried an air of refinement. "You Rose?" he asked without greeting, brushing imaginary dust from the bench before sitting down. "Yes," she nodded. "And you must be Bradley?" "Exactly." He gave her a sharp, measuring look. "So you're the main caregiver for my father now?" "I take care of Kane, yes," Rose replied cautiously. "But there are other aides too. I'm not the only one." Bradley waved his hand dismissively. "Doesn't matter. I wanted to ask you about his condition. Do you think he's capable of making independent decisions? Of understanding his actions?" Rose tensed. Where was this heading? "Kane is perfectly sound of mind, if that's what you're asking," she said firmly. "He has trouble speaking and moving because of the stroke, but his thinking is clear." Bradley frowned. "And on what grounds do you make that judgment? Do you have a medical degree?" "I worked as a nurse for 20 years, Rose answered calmly. "And I have experience from a medical ward in another facility. I've seen enough stroke patients to tell the difference between physical impairment and cognitive decline." "All right," Bradley nodded. "Then tell me, have you noticed any oddities in his behavior? Has he said anything incoherent, illogical? Any strange ideas?" Rose shook her head, puzzled. "No, nothing like that. Kane reads a lot, thinks clearly, we even discuss books and the news." "And has he mentioned his inheritance?" Bradley cut in, leaning forward. "His plans about the apartment, the accounts?" "So that's it." Rose's stomach tightened. Shelby had been right. Bradley was circling around his father's estate. "No," she said firmly. "We don't talk about those things. I'm his caregiver, nothing more." Bradley leaned back, eyeing her with suspicion. "But you're not just a caregiver, are you? My father asked me to find you. Said you were special to him. Don't pretend it's only professional between you." Rose faltered. Kane had spoken about her to his son? Called her special? What could that mean? I do spend more time with your father than the other aides," she admitted carefully. "I read to him, sometimes we talk. But that's all." "Sure," Bradley drawled, not convinced. "And the fact that he changed his will after you showed up, that's just coincidence?" "What?" Rose's surprise was genuine. "What will? I don't know anything about that." Bradley studied her face, searching for a lie. Finding none, he scowled. 2 weeks ago, a notary came to see him. My father changed his will. And somehow no one here at Golden Autumn can tell me what he changed. Confidentiality, they say. But I found out you were with him that day. So you must know what he planned." Rose shook her head. "I really was with Kane that day, but when the notary arrived, I was asked to step out. I don't know what they discussed." That was the absolute truth. She remembered it well. Harriet had told her the professor was meeting with the notary and asked her to prepare the room, but Rose hadn't been present for the conversation. "I don't believe you," Bradley said sharply. "He trusts you, he must have told you." "Even if he did, that's his right," Rose said calmly, rising to her feet. "And you'd do better to ask him directly." "Excuse me, I have duties waiting." She turned to leave, but Bradley grabbed her sleeve. "Wait, I didn't mean to offend you. I'm just worried about my father. His condition, who knows what's going on in his head after a stroke? What if someone is manipulating him? Someone like you?" "Kane knows exactly what he's doing," she repeated firmly. "And if he changed his will, he had his reasons." "Do you know he has 3 grandchildren?" Bradley suddenly asked. "Archie, my sister's son, and my 2 boys, Miles and Simon. They need support, education, a future. That apartment in downtown Denver is worth a fortune. It should go to the family. It's Kane's decision who to leave it to," Rose shrugged. "And I repeat, I don't know what's in his will." "But if you did know," Bradley pressed, "if he decided to leave something to an outsider, would that really be right?" Rose studied him closely. A suspicion crept into her mind. Could Kane really have mentioned her in his will? That couldn't be. Why would he? "All these questions are better for you to discuss with your father," she said firmly. "And now, excuse me, I have to go." She pulled her sleeve free and walked quickly down the path, feeling Bradley's hostile gaze burning into her back. Something told her this conversation wasn't over. Back at the nursing home, the first thing Rose did was head straight to Kane. He had been dozing, but when he heard the door open, he stirred. "Oh, it's you," he smiled. "I've been waiting." "Kane," Rose began without preamble, "your son just called me. We met in the park. He was asking questions about your will." The professor's smile faded, his brow furrowed. "That damn boy. Can't even wait until I'm gone." "He said you changed your will," Rose went on. And for some reason, he thinks I know what you changed. Kane looked at her for a long moment, as if weighing something inside. Then, slowly, he said, I left you something. A small apartment on the outskirts. Bought it long ago, rented it out. It's not much, but it'll be enough to live on. Rose sank onto a chair, unable to believe her ears. You left me an apartment? But why? I'm just a caregiver. You know why, Kane said quietly. I owe you. For those 20 years. But this isn't right, Rose stammered. You have family, children, grandchildren. They need it more than I do. They have everything, Kane said firmly. And you? You have nothing. This is fair. Rose sat in silence, lost for words. On one hand, the thought of having her own apartment, a roof no one could take away, was tempting. On the other, accepting such a gift from the man she had once hated for staying silent at her trial felt wrong. I can't accept this, she said at last. It's too much. Far too much. You can, Kane insisted. And you will. That's not up for debate. He closed his eyes, signaling the conversation was over. Rose quietly left the room, her head spinning from what she'd just heard. An apartment. Her very own apartment. That changed everything. The next few days passed in uneasy suspense. Rose half expected Bradley to show up again, but he neither called nor came. Instead, on Friday, something happened she hadn't seen coming. Harriet appeared at her door with an announcement. Tomorrow the home would be visited by a full delegation from the foundation, including the chair herself. Alma Scheider wants to host a cultural evening for the residents, the head nurse explained. Her son studies at a music school, he'll be playing the violin. And some other kids from a charity project will perform too. We need to get the assembly hall and the residents ready. Can you help? Of course, Rose nodded, hiding her nerves. Alma's son would be playing the violin? That meant this was her chance to see her grandson. Even from afar, even in secret, still, it would be something. The whole next day, Rose helped prepare the hall. She arranged chairs, hung garlands, and helped old ladies fix their hair for the concert. The whole time, her stomach churned with nervous excitement. Soon, so very soon, she would see Maxwell, her grandson. By 3 o'clock, everything was ready. The residents filled the hall, staff bustled around with last-minute touches. Rose found a spot in the farthest corner, where she had a clear view of the stage while staying out of sight. Finally, the doors opened and the delegation entered. Alma came first, elegant, in a tailored suit, her hair pinned neatly back. Behind her was a young woman with a folder, probably her assistant. And then came a group of teenagers carrying instrument cases. Rose's eyes clung to the boys. Which one was Maxwell? The tall one with the serious face? The one with the messy hair? There were 5 of them, all about the same age, each with a violin case. Alma stepped onto the stage and began speaking about the importance of connecting generations, about how much the young can learn from the old and vice versa. Rose barely listened. Her eyes never left the boys, now seated in the front row, chatting and smiling. And now, Alma said, finishing her speech, I'm proud to present students of the music school. They will perform works by Vivaldi and Mozart. The teenagers climbed onto the stage, forming a line. Alma introduced each of them. Dexter Minton, first violin. Daniel Carter, second violin. Sarah Mitchell, viola. James Lang, cello. And Maxwell Scheider, solo violin. Rose froze. Maxwell. There he was, her grandson. A tall, slender young man with a serious face and straight posture. Fair hair combed back, delicate features, just like Alma at his age. And his eyes blue, clear, sharp, the eyes of his grandfather Marvin, before the drinking. Maxwell raised his violin, paused for a breath, and began to play. The first notes of Vivaldi, gentle, piercing, filled the hall. Rose couldn't take her eyes off him. He was so much like his mother, focused, determined, absorbed in every note. She didn't notice the tears slipping down her cheeks. 20 years. 20 years she hadn't even known this boy existed. And now here he was, almost grown, talented, beautiful, and a stranger. At one moment, Maxwell lifted his gaze and for a second, his eyes met Rose's. She froze, breathless. But then his gaze drifted past her, lost again in the music. After the concert, there was a small reception. Staff served tea and cookies while residents chatted with the guests. Rose slipped quietly out of the hall. Her heart raced, her hands trembled. She had seen her grandson. And now she would carry that memory with her, how he played the violin, how he steadied the notes with such intensity, how a faint smile appeared when he tackled a difficult passage. She walked down the corridor, hardly aware of her surroundings, when suddenly she heard a voice behind her. "Excuse me." She turned and saw Maxwell standing a few steps away, violin case in hand. "Could you tell me where to find Professor Warlock?" he asked. "They told me he's staying in this nursing home." Rose stared at her grandson, unable to form words. Up close, he looked even more like Alma, the same eyes, the same tilt of the head. "Are you all right?" the boy asked, noticing her expression. "I'm fine," she finally managed. "Kane Warlock is in room 12, on the second floor. I can take you there." "Thank you," Maxwell smiled. "I'd really like to see him. My mom says he did a lot for our foundation." They walked down the hallway. Rose stayed a step behind, just so she could steady her grandson. The way he moved the same light stride Alma had when she was young. "Have you been working here long?" Maxwell asked politely, breaking the silence. "A few months," Rose answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "And have you been playing violin long?" "Since I was 6, the boy smiled. "Mom insisted. At first I didn't want to, but then I got hooked. Next year I'll be applying to the conservatory." "That's wonderful," Rose said sincerely. You have talent." They reached Kane's room. Rose knocked softly and pushed the door open without waiting for an answer. "Kane, you have a visitor." The professor was half sitting in bed with a book. He set it aside when he saw them and nodded warmly. "Maxwell, what a surprise." "Hello, Professor." Maxwell grinned. "I heard you were here and wanted to stop by. How are you feeling?" "Better," Kane said. "Sit down, tell me everything." Rose quietly closed the door behind them to give them privacy. Just before it shut, she heard Kane ask, "Does your mother know you're here?" "No," Maxwell replied. "I told her I was going to friends. For some reason she didn't want me visiting you. Strange, isn't it?" The door clicked shut, and Rose didn't hear Kane's reply. But one thing she knew for certain, this visit wasn't an accident. Somehow Kane had arranged it. In the days that followed, Maxwell came twice more. Rose watched him climb the stairs with his violin case, slip into Kane's room, and sit for long visits, sometimes playing for him. From a distance, in secret, she observed her grandson but didn't dare come closer. She was afraid to scare him off, afraid to upset the fragile balance her life had finally found. One evening, when she brought Kane his dinner, she found them deep in conversation. "Can you believe it? I've got a conservatory audition coming up," Maxwell was saying. "An early one, through a special program. If I pass, I'll already be a student next year." "You'll pass," Kane said confidently. "You've got real talent." "Mom's against it," the boy sighed. "She wants me to study economics or law. She says music isn't serious, that I won't be able to support myself." "And what do you think?" Kane asked. "I want to do music," Maxwell said firmly. "It's the only thing I truly love and know how to do. But Mom, she's done so much for me, I don't want to upset her." Rose quietly set the tray down and was about to leave, but Kane noticed her. "Rose, join us. Maxwell was just telling me about his plans." She froze, unsure what to do. Her grandson looked at her with polite curiosity, having no idea who she really was. "I don't want to intrude," Rose murmured. "You're not intruding," Kane said with a smile. "Right, Maxwell?" "Of course," the boy nodded. "I remember you. You showed me to the professor's room the first time. Do you like music too?" Rose sat on the edge of a chair, trying to still the trembling in her hands. "Yes," she said softly. "Very much. Especially the violin." "Then I'll play for you too," Maxwell smiled, taking the instrument from its case. "It's Bach, the chaconne. I'm preparing it for the audition." He began to play, and Rose went completely still, hardly daring to breathe. Music filled the little room, bouncing off the walls, reaching straight into her chest. Maxwell played with passion, eyes closed, entirely lost in the melody. At that moment he looked so much like young Alma that Rose's breath caught. The same tiny crease between the brows when concentrating, the same tilt of the head. When he finished, silence hung in the room. Rose couldn't speak, her throat was tight with emotion. That was beautiful," she finally managed. "You're very talented." "Thank you," Maxwell said shyly. "But Mom thinks it's just a hobby. She says musicians aren't needed these days." "Your mom is wrong," Kane said firmly. "Real talent always finds a way." "Your mother's just worried about you," Rose added gently. "She wants you to have security, a stable future." "You sound just like her," Maxwell sighed. "Only she also says I should continue the family business. We've got a construction company and a charity foundation. She wants me to inherit all that." "And you don't want to?" Rose asked carefully. I don't know, he shrugged. I like working with the foundation, helping people, but I can't picture myself in an office from 9 to 6, wearing a suit, carrying a briefcase. He grimaced. That's just not me. Kane looked from Maxwell to Rose and back again, as if watching an intriguing play unfold. And what about your father? Rose asked. Maxwell's expression shut down instantly. I don't know my father. He and Mom divorced when I was 2. He lives somewhere in Europe. We don't talk. Rose nodded, unsure what to say. She wanted to reach out, hug her grandson, tell him she understood, that she would support him no matter what. But she had no right. To him, she was just a caregiver, a stranger. Talent shouldn't be buried, Kane said firmly. I'll talk to your mother. Just then Maxwell's phone rang. He looked at the screen and frowned. It's Mom. She's probably looking for me. I told her I was going to my tutor's. He answered quickly, assured his mother he'd be home soon, and after saying goodbye, left. Rose watched him go, her chest aching. That's how Alma once left too, heading to school, to friends, to the skating rink. And she'd always glance back at the door, waving goodbye. Maxwell didn't look back. Thank you, Kane said once they were alone. For what? Rose asked, confused. For not giving yourself away. For not telling him who you are. She lowered her eyes. That's not my right, to tell him, if Alma doesn't want him to know. She's afraid, Kane said gently, afraid of losing his respect. She built her whole image as this flawless businesswoman, a philanthropist. And then here comes her mother, the convict. I understand, Rose nodded. I don't blame her. 20 years is a long time. She grew up without me, handled everything on her own. I don't have the right to break into her life now and demand anything. And what about your grandson's life? Kane asked. Rose thought for a moment. Maxwell is different. He's almost grown. He makes his own decisions now. If he knew the truth, he could choose for himself whether he wants a relationship with his grandmother. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe someday. Don't wait, Kane said suddenly, his voice sharp. I had 20 years to fix my mistake. I didn't, and I regret it every day. Rose sat quietly, turning over his words. He wasn't wrong. Life was too short to put off the big decisions. But on the other hand, she didn't want to wreck Alma's relationship with her son, didn't want to interfere. I'll think about it, she finally said. For now it's enough for me just to see him sometimes. To hear him play. To know he's doing well. The next day Rose had a day off. She decided to wander the city. The weather was clear, autumn in full glory. Leaves crunched under her feet, the air smelled of apples and damp earth. Without realizing it, she found herself in front of the conservatory. A grand building with columns, steps, statues of composers at the entrance. So many great musicians had walked through those doors. Maybe soon her grandson would be one of them. She was standing there, lost in thought, when she heard a familiar voice. Rose, what are you doing here? She turned. Maxwell stood just a few feet away, violin case in hand. I was just walking, she answered, flustered. And you? I've got a lesson with Professor Anderson, he said with a smile. He teaches here, agreed to work with me before the audition. Do you like classical music? Yes, Rose nodded. Especially Tchaikovsky. And Vivaldi. That's great. Maxwell's eyes lit up. I'm actually working on Tchaikovsky right now. Want me to play it for you next time I come to see Professor Warlock? I'd love that, she said, smiling. They stood facing each other, grandmother and grandson, though he didn't know it. Rose studied his face, memorizing every feature. In that moment she wanted to grab his hands, to tell him the truth. But she held back. You remind me of someone, Maxwell said suddenly, tilting his head the same way Alma used to as a child. I can't place who. But your eyes, they look so familiar. Probably just coincidence, Rose said quickly. There are plenty of people who look alike. Maybe, Maxwell nodded. Well, I'd better get to my lesson. See you at the professor's. He bounded up the conservatory steps and disappeared inside. Rose stood watching long after. You have such familiar eyes, he'd said. Blood doesn't lie. Deep down, he must sense the connection, even if he doesn't understand it yet. On her way home, Rose kept thinking about Kane's words. Don't wait. Maybe he was right. Maybe it was time to tell Maxwell the truth. But what would Alma say? How would she react? Lost in thought, she almost didn't notice the black car parked by the entrance to the nursing home. Only when a tall figure stepped out and blocked her path did she snap back to reality. Good evening, Rose, said Bradley, Kane's son. We need to have a serious talk. Something glinted in his hand, a folder of documents? Or something else? About what? She asked warily. About my father, Bradley replied, his voice carrying a threat. And about whatever you two are plotting. At that very moment, Kane also had a visitor. Alma sat by his bed, her face tight with anger. Why are you doing this? She demanded. Why are you pushing my son to come here? Why are you introducing him to her? I don't know what you mean, Kane said calmly. Oh, you know perfectly well. Alma leaned forward. Maxwell told me he's been coming here to play, and that he met some sweet nurse who loves music. That's her, isn't it? My mother? Kane stayed silent, meeting her stare without flinching. You have no right to interfere in my life, Alma went on, or in my son's. I've spent 20 years building everything from scratch, shielding him from the truth, creating a normal family reputation. And what's so terrible about the truth? Kane asked softly. That a woman defended herself from abuse? That she spent 20 years in prison for something she didn't do? You don't know anything, Alma snapped. You weren't there. You didn't see. I was, Kane said suddenly, his voice hard. I saw everything. I heard everything. Every night. How your father came home drunk. How he beat your mother. How he threatened to kill her. And I stayed silent. All those years. Alma stared at him, her eyes wide in shock. You knew my parents? She whispered. I lived one floor above, Kane nodded. I was at the trial. I could have told the truth, but I didn't. I was a coward. And your mother paid with 20 years of her life because of me. He drew in a breath, then added, looking straight at her. It's time to end this injustice, Alma. Your mother has suffered enough. Don't take her grandson away from her too. I don't know what you're talking about, Rose said firmly, staring at Bradley. And I don't have time for this. My shift starts in an hour. She tried to walk past, but Bradley grabbed her arm. Don't go. I know my father rewrote his will in your favor. And I know you're somehow connected to Scheider. I saw you at that concert, watching that violin kid. Rose went cold. So he had been following her? I work with a detective agency, Bradley said, as if reading her mind. I dug into your past. 20 years for killing your husband, right? Wonder what my father will say when he finds out he's trusting his life to a murderer? He knows, Rose said calmly. About the trial, the sentence. He knows everything. For a moment Bradley looked thrown, but then he straightened up again. Then tell me, what about the will? Did he really leave you the apartment? You should ask your father that, Rose replied. Now let go of me, or I'll call security. Bradley reluctantly released her arm. This isn't over. I won't let some ex-con trick my father out of what's his. Your father is of sound mind, Rose shot back. And maybe you should visit him more often. Not for the inheritance, just because he's your father. She turned and hurried toward the building, but her chest felt heavy. What if Bradley told Alma about their connection? What if it all blew up into a scandal? Climbing to the second floor, Rose headed toward Kane's room. As she got closer, she heard voices. One was the professor's, the other, a woman's, sounded familiar. She pushed the door open a crack and froze. Alma was sitting at Kane's bedside. They were having a serious conversation. And you expect me to just let her back into our lives? Alma was saying. After everything that happened? What happened? Kane asked. You don't even know the truth. I remember that night, Alma said quietly. The shouting, the blood, the police. How they dragged her away in handcuffs. Those images haunted me my whole life. And do you remember how your father came home drunk? How he yelled? How he hit your mother? Alma said nothing, her head lowered. You were a child, Kane continued gently. You couldn't understand it all. But now you're a grown woman, you can see the truth. And what difference does it make? Alma asked wearily. 20 years have passed. We're strangers now. But Maxwell Kane reminded her. He has the right to know he has a grandmother. At that moment, Rose stepped into the room. Alma, I'm not asking you to change your life. I won't interfere in it. I just want to see my grandson sometimes. To hear him play. To know he's okay. Alma jumped up, her face twisting. You were eavesdropping? I just came to check on Kane. It's my job. The silence that followed was heavy. Alma stared at her mother, her expression a mix of anger, pain, and confusion. Alma, Rose said softly, I know I heard you. You grew up without a mother, and it left a scar. But believe me, what I did back then, I was defending myself. Your father came at me with a knife. If I hadn't pushed him away, he would have killed me. And maybe you too. I don't remember that, Alma whispered. I just remember waking up to screams, running into the kitchen, and there was so much blood. You were crying, Rose nodded. Standing in the doorway, sobbing, and I couldn't reach you, couldn't hold you. The police were holding me back. And then they took me away. For 20 years. Alma turned to the window, her shoulders trembling. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Rose went on, because I don't believe I was guilty for defending myself. But I am asking you to open your heart. Not to me. To Maxwell. He deserves the truth. And what if he turns on me? Alma asked in a whisper. What if, when he finds out I lied all these years, that his grandmother wasn't dead but in prison, what if he hates me for it? He loves you, Kane said gently. You're his mother. Nothing can change that. At that moment the door swung open, and Maxwell appeared on the threshold. Behind him loomed Bradley. Mom? The boy asked in surprise. What are you doing here? Alma flinched, spinning around. Maxwell? Why aren't you in school? I had a break between classes, so I thought I'd drop by to see the professor, Maxwell replied, glancing from his mother to Rose and back. What's this, a meeting or something? More like a family reunion, Bradley smirked behind him. Aren't you going to introduce your mom to her grandmother, kid? Bradley, Rose cried. Shut your mouth. Grandmother? Maxwell repeated, bewildered. What are you talking about? My grandmother died when Mom was little. Not exactly, Bradley cut in again. She's standing right in front of you. Rose herself, fresh out of a 20-year stretch for killing your granddad. Shut up. Kane barked suddenly, and everyone froze. For the first time in ages, he had spoken without a stammer, clear, commanding. Bradley, get out of my room. Now. Bradley was taken aback but quickly recovered. You can't throw me out, father. I'm your son. These people are outsiders. They're manipulating you, chasing after your money. Out, Kane thundered, pushing himself up in bed. Or I'll call security. Stunned, Bradley backed toward the door. Fine, I'll go. But this isn't over. I'll contest your will. I'll prove you weren't competent when you signed it. He turned and stormed out, slamming the door behind him. The room sank into heavy silence. Maxwell's eyes darted between his mother and Rose, confusion written all over his face. Mom, what's going on? What did he mean? Alma drew a deep breath, as if preparing to dive into icy water. We need to talk, son. Please, sit down. Maxwell obediently sat on the edge of Kane's bed. The professor gave his hand a reassuring pat. Rose really is your grandmother, Alma said quietly. My mother. She didn't die, like I told you. She was in prison, serving time for murder. Murder? Maxwell went pale. Who? My father, your grandfather, Alma said. But it was self-defense. He tried to kill her, and she fought back. Maxwell sat in silence, trying to process what he'd just heard. Then he slowly turned to Rose. So that's why you looked so familiar to me. That's why your eyes are just like Mom's. Rose nodded, unable to speak, her eyes brimming with tears. Why didn't you tell me? Maxwell asked, turning to his mother. Why did you keep it a secret all these years? I was afraid, Alma admitted honestly. Afraid you'd be ashamed of us. Afraid kids at school would mock you. Afraid it would ruin your future. I just wanted to protect you. Protect me? Maxwell repeated. By taking away my grandmother? By cutting me off from my roots, from my family? He stood and walked over to Rose. How old were you when it happened? 45, she said softly. Your mom was 14. And you sat in prison for 20 years. Horror filled his eyes. For defending yourself? There were no witnesses, Rose explained. No one saw your grandfather attack me. Or no one wanted to. She shot a quick glance at Kane, who lowered his eyes in guilt. Why didn't you tell me when we first met? Maxwell pressed. Why keep quiet? Your mom didn't want you to know, Rose answered. And I had no right to go against her wishes. Maxwell thought for a moment, then nodded firmly. I need time to think. This is a lot to take in. He turned to Alma. Mom, I'm going home. I need to be alone. Of course, Alma said softly. I'll come later. We'll talk. Maxwell headed for the door but stopped on the threshold, looking back at Rose. Grandma, may I call you that? Of course, she whispered, hardly believing her ears. I'll come back tomorrow, he said, and I'll play you Tchaikovsky, like I promised. With that, he left, leaving the three adults both shaken and deeply moved. He called you Grandma, Kane said with a smile. That's a good sign. Alma walked over to her mother and hesitantly took her hand. I need time, Mom, to get used to this. To forgive, I guess. Not you. Myself. For living with a lie for 20 years. I understand, sweetheart, Rose said quietly, squeezing her fingers. We'll have time now. We finally will. A year later, In a modest apartment on the outskirts of Denver, an unusual gathering took place. Around the dinner table sat Rose, Alma, Maxwell, now a first-year conservatory student, Kane in his wheelchair, stronger than he'd been a year ago, and his daughter Jennifer. To the new home, Maxwell declared, raising his glass of juice. And to new beginnings. Everyone joined the toast. Rose looked around at her guests, overwhelmed by gratitude. A year ago, she could never have dreamed of this, a place of her own, a rebuilt bond with her daughter, a grandson who visited often and played violin just for her. Of course, things weren't perfect. Bradley had tried to contest his father's will, but the court had ruled Kane Warlock competent. Alma was still sometimes distant, the old wounds not healed overnight. But the process had begun, slowly, steadily. After dinner, when the guests had scattered into different rooms, Rose stepped out onto the small balcony. Kane joined her, maneuvering his chair with effort. "Beautiful view," he said, gazing out at the city lights. "Yes," Rose agreed. "I still can't believe this is my apartment, my own roof over my head." "You earned it," Kane said firmly, "after everything you've been through." They sat in silence, watching the windows light up in the buildings nearby. "You know," Rose said thoughtfully, "I used to think in prison that the road home was closed to me forever. That I'd lost everything, my family, my home, my future. But I've learned something. Sometimes you just have to build a new home, where people accept you. And sometimes the old road leads you back after all." Kane smiled. "It just takes time." From inside came the sound of a violin. Maxwell was playing Tchaikovsky. The tender melody filled the apartment, wrapping it in warmth and comfort. "Yes," Rose said, listening intently. "Sometimes all it takes is time, and people willing to reach out." She looked gratefully at Kane. Without him, without his determination to fix the mistake of 20 years ago, she wouldn't be here now, wouldn't be listening to her grandson play, wouldn't feel the cautious but real warmth of her daughter's presence. "Thank you for forgiving me," Kane said softly. "The feeling's mutual," Rose replied with a smile. And from the next room, the music kept flowing, weaving past and present together, filling the empty spaces, healing old wounds. Music that seemed to say, not all roads lead back home, but sometimes you can build a new home where once there was only emptiness. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Your support inspires us to keep bringing you new and captivating stories every day. On the main page, you can already find our next story. We wish you all the best and happiness in life.